Through the Mayhem, the Sightly podcast series, bringing marketing industry leaders together to discuss the ever-shifting media landscape. Learn about the ins and outs of real-time marketing, influencers, data privacy, technology, and so much more. All from industry experts with real experience, giving you the real answers. Now, let's break through the mayhem.
Hey everybody, welcome to another incredible episode of Breaking Through the Mayhem. I'm your host, Ben Lambert from Sightly. Excited to be joined here by Zach Lain. Zach is the Director of Global Partnerships at PepsiCo. Zach, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, excited for us to chat in this formal podcast setting. I know you and I have become pretty close friends over our numerous Beat Retreat hangouts.
Yep.
Shout out to Andy for connecting us at the wonderful Beat Retreats.
Amazing.
Would love for you to give our listeners a little bit of a background into your career journey and what brought you into the fun world of data and leading that charge over at PepsiCo.
Cool. Well, thanks, Ben, for having me. Thank you, Sightly team. This is awesome. Yeah, I mean, maybe I might spin the old wheel back a little too far, but I mean, I think, Ben, you and I might have even spoken about this. I think if I look back, I really got interested in data as a kid. I remember being fascinated by the Chinese language. I first thought people were drawing pictures for their language. It's like, oh snap, that's like really, really cool. You quickly learn that's really not the case. But once you start learning Chinese, I got hooked on the structure behind it. There's patterns, there's logic, the way that meaning is built into the characters themselves that then imbue a larger thought. I think that curiosity about how information is organized but really interpreted stuck with me. Actually went to grad school in China, but I think that was like my first touch point, if you will. Maybe it's pushing it, but with data per se. Fast forward to my career, I started working in media and analytics by way of spending a few years at Dow Jones, the publisher of the Wall Street Journal. For folks that don't know, Dow Jones has an entire data product suite built on delivering news content in real time to other platforms. So I worked directly with the folks who were pumping data into making sure, they didn't break. They broke all the time. And my clients were kept abreast of all, the latest and greatest new data that we were ingesting, the new news content we were ingesting. It was a really hard role, but it was really fun, for lack of better words. It made me kind of think how we could use data, not just to answer what happened, but why and what should we do next. From there, I spent a little bit more time hands and keys roles, some blood, sweat, and many tears roles in ad tech, moving to a CP afterwards. And eventually migrating to PepsiCo, which was new at the time, but setting up a global data and analytics team where we could bring that big global, huge organization focus to local problems, to brand problems across media. So for me, the whole publisher to platform to brand arc has been kind of fun, has been nice. It's been undergirded by this, I don't know, quest is too strong a word, but this, this interest in understanding how things work at that system level. And I think this lens is really shaped in how I approach data. It's not just a tool, but it can really be a framework for future problem solving.
That's awesome. And the Chinese lettering conversation and language is a really cool one and very impressive. And are you fluent in Chinese?
I will tell you that I was, but Chinese is one of those things like, man, it's like use it or lose it. And just because it's tonal and, we don't understand tones aren't imbued in English. I could spend the whole podcast talking about this, but involved in this. So that's the part that's hard. These minute differences in sound mean radically different things. So I'm decent. I wouldn't say I'm fluent anymore, sadly.
When you see people with like a tattoo in Chinese lettering, I feel like everybody always thinks it means one thing. Does it actually mean that for the most part? Or
that's a funny question. Like I've never seen anyone like I've seen on TikTok or Instagram where, people get things that say really inappropriate things. I've never seen that. But I've seen things that mean like really like basic, not like really, really like not poignant thoughts. Maybe it's just like, like thunder or something, but it's like, I don't know, like I feel like it should be something more impactful than that. But anyway, yeah, nothing too crazy. Nothing too crazy.
Okay. Because I remember as a kid, I was a big like hat person. Like I wanted every type of hat that all of my teams, and lids when lids first came
Oh
out, and
yeah,
I
nice.
wanted every different type of hat. And at the time, the Chinese lettering hats were the cool thing to
That's
have
cool.
of the
That's
team
cool.
names in Chinese lettering. And I didn't never I just believed that it was right, and I feel like because it was, commercialized, you hope that it was right, but
Hopefully.
yeah, but the
Awesome.
translation
Love that.
is definitely not an apples to apples translation as, you know
Yeah, definitely not. Especially some of those team names. Those don't
yes.
translate well. That's just kind of like
No.
a guess. So
No,
okay,
and
okay.
but I can definitely see, seeing that of the data connection and a really deep one for you, and I think looking back when everyone looks back at their childhood of like what was the one thing that really
It's that.
shaped your career and it was Chinese. That's really cool.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Well, I know one of the other big pieces that, helped shape your career and kind of your work ethic, you were a competitive swimmer.
I was.
Which again leads to, the tattoos and the Chinese lettering conversations. I feel like definitely there's some synergy there, but, talk about, I know you were a distance swimmer, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Which it's funny, my sister was a competitive swimmer and she also was a distance swimmer. I have many friends that were every single person that I meet that's like, yeah, I swam in college or I swam this way. The 500
The
was their
worst.
event.
It's the
And
worst.
like that and the 1650, which is the mile,
Yep.
are brutal, but have to really shape kind of your work ethic and thought process. Do you look back on all those trainings and all those events the same way you look back on the Chinese lettering and think that it had a big impact on your growth and career?
Ooh, it definitely did, but the swimming, I joke slash not joke to people. I'm a swammer. Like I did my time. I went through the trauma. Like I did it. I have dreams about swimming all the time. It's still about like, being
That's
late
better
to
that's better than
to
the people that have the dreams of, like, drowning, like, the perpetual dream of
that
drowning, so
is
I think dreaming about
true.
swimming
Okay.
is more of a positive.
Always finding the silver lining. It's true,
Yes.
not drowning. Yeah, no, I mean, I think for me, I was never the fastest guy in the team. I mean, pretty far from it. I think looking back now though, if we're trying to like divine something from the proverbial like tea leaves here, it is pretty clear that swimming instilled in me habits of, being consistent, incremental progress. So I think about, now that, very much how to have a small wins mindset. The name of the game is to make those consistent, those measurable, those iterative improvements over time. If you make a great big breakthrough, you drop a bunch of time in your race or you do something really good at work, amazing, awesome. But I think that process, that North Star, should really be focused on evolution versus revolution. So that was always kind of how I approach swimming. And I think that's what I take from swimming, those 5 a.m. practices, those, your parents driving you to cross the state, the country, into sort of a more professional setting now.
Yeah, it's, the discipline and the work ethic. Swimming is I mean, track is probably similar. There's similarities, but that amount of practice and the hours and all for, again, you were distance, so at least you're come race time, you were in the pool longer than the sprinters, but it definitely does lead to, that discipline and kind of those little wins. Um,
Whether you like it or not, that's what's coming for you.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
So another one, and this is one that since you brought up the Chinese lettering and we brought up tattoos, I'm not somebody that has a tattoo, or would probably ever get one, but talking swimming and knowing that there are a select few of Olympians that actually
Mm.
do. If you were to get a tattoo, if you were an Olympian, where would you get
Ooh.
the Olympic rings tattoo? And do you believe that if you were an Olympian, you would have to get the Olympic ring tattoos? Because my feeling is you're in this 1% of athletes that you've got to flaunt it. Also knowing that if you are an Olympic athlete, you probably have the physique that
Yeah, sure.
will go along with it.
Um, Interesting question. I don't have any tattoos, but short answer, yes, I think you'd get one. Maybe this is like a weird detail, but if you're an Olympic athlete, you're really fit, you have no
Hmm.
body fat. Wouldn't the tattoo hurt more? I guess depending on where you're getting
Mm,
it. I have a low pain tolerance, so maybe it's my mind goes immediately to that. It's like, oh crap, if you don't have any fat. But where would I get it? I would not get it on like my shin. That
mhm.
I can't imagine. That sounds too painful. Um, Maybe my thigh. I think that's kind of cool. Could be cool.
Okay.
I have no tattoos and no interest either. Um, what would you
I
say?
never thought about the pain aspect to it. I was always an inner bicep, because
Okay.
to your point, you're an Olympic athlete, you have no body fat, you're probably a lot more jacked than
Yeah,
I
yeah,
am,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
so the bulging bicep, and it's somewhat hidden that the only time when you open your
That's a
arm,
good
it's
point.
there,
Right.
but also still pretty prevalent when if you're wearing a t-shirt, it's gonna
Yeah,
slide.
you can. Yeah,
You'll see a
exactly.
glimpse of it. But yeah, I always find it to be an interesting question because people it's most of us, I don't know too many Olympic athletes.
I don't know too many athletes. Yeah,
So having that conversation, it's a great what
yeah.
if.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yes. Well, cool. So back to some data partnerships here at Pepsi. So would love to, kind of help people get a better understanding of what actually does, global partnerships entail for a massive CPG company like Pepsi, and kind of what you've seen as some misunderstandings, whether it be,
Yeah.
trying to explain to your parents what actually it
Oh,
is that you do for work, or even people in the industry that maybe think one thing versus another.
oh, I think. I mean, that could be another question too. That could be a media question. What do your parents think they do or you do? I think my parents think I'm the Mad Men style
Mhm.
of, like the two, three martini lunch, two martini lunch, like that type of stuff. I like the old school way of that kind of stuff. But it's a good question. What do people misunderstand about, a team, like a data partnership team at a company that sells chips and soda like PepsiCo? I think to kind of zoom out a little bit, working at a company like PepsiCo, I think the challenge here is that it's the challenge and the opportunity is the same thing, is that it is a brand led organization. The brands control everything. The challenge is navigating the diversity of the portfolio in aligning across very different brand priorities. Even take, very well known brands, one on beverage, one on snacks for us, take Cheetos and Mountain Dew. They're both totally iconic, but they're quite a bit different in terms of their audience, their voice, their innovation cycle, their GTM strategies. What works for one might be completely off base with the other. Then you even take not the crazier brands, but the more, then you think about our brands like Cap'n Crunch or Sabra Hummus or Muscle Milk that are even a little bit farther from the core here. Then, layer in different tech stacks, different personnel, different just like know-how, and you're left with this patchwork of priorities, of alignment, of resources, of budget. But it's not just technical. I mentioned the tech stack. It's not just technical. We have to be able to flex between those brand needs while still building a common data infrastructure, governance models. We work in over 200 markets around the world, which still is kind of crazy when I think about that. Over 200 markets around the world. So, being able to speak the language of each of those brands in each market, while staying abreast with compliance and legal, all that fun stuff is really hard. So it's this balancing act, right? Of creating a global consistency without killing that local relevance and building systems that serve both as, for example, a beverage brand, one of our new beverage brands trying to deepen and trying to drive digital engagement with, say, a snack brand that is focused more on, launching a seasonal flavor. So it's this balance between, you know, global continuity and local relevance is, it's hard. It's hard to kind of find that sweet spot.
Yeah, I'd imagine that global to local aspects with both existing long existing brands versus
Oh yeah,
the new kid on the block is quite a daily struggle for you of finding the right smart data partnerships to help get that
totally.
information to understand how to grow the new guys but then also how to kind of maintain the old guys within their consumers and finding the growth, because at the end of the day, you're still trying to grow the existing brands and find new audiences that are going to
Very much
engage.
so. Yeah,
Um, but the focus on the newer ones is really about growth, and
totally.
that global to local is got to be fascinating at times for you.
There's a rub. There's a rub there. There's in figuring out, it manifests differently in different markets, different brands, Cheetos Pakistan has different needs than Cheetos Brazil. Same brand, but the market relevance is quite different. The market positioning. And so how we use data, how we use technology to inform those strategies, again, has to manifest differently. So it means we're always busy. I think that's the takeaway. We're always busy.
Yeah. And I'd assume too, from your lens, being in a global role, you've been able to see some really cool things. I mean, you talked earlier about your love as a kid for the Chinese language, but I'm sure that aspect too of being able to see the world both from the data partnership lens as well as physically see the world has been a
Yeah.
really cool opportunity in your role.
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, at the end of the day, my data strategy is finding new ways to understand our consumers and, in novel ways across, a increasingly wide set of snacking occasions. So, how that manifests in China, very different than South Africa, very different than Canada. So that's been, to your point, Ben, pretty fascinating. Yeah.
That's awesome. So would love to kind of take a step back a little bit here and talk a little bit about, we talked about your career trajectory and your growth, and has there been any, whether it be one person or a group of people, or, I know we've been to events before and the networking, and, I know we
Yep.
share some mutual friends that have been incredible leaders, to
Yep.
follow and pay attention to. But what kind of advice has really stuck with you as you've grown in your career and you look to kind of continue to grow your career, that you try to emulate as much as you can on a daily basis?
I talk about this often. I was on the phone this morning with someone and talked about this. The one piece of advice I genuinely believe in, again, I don't think anyone that answers this question is spilling some like earth shattering thought here, but I think for me, it's have an opinion. Like, obviously, you need to be smart about it. You can't be rude. You need to have your facts and do the work. Don't be annoying. But at the end of the day, right, we are employed by our respective employers to not just echo or recite. We're there to like contextualize information, add perspective, and really, help others, help the business make better decisions. So, I tell my team that we're here because our brains are being our brains are being rented, like especially in data roles, we're not just relaying impression counts or, pulling a chart, we're there to say, here's what matters, here's what doesn't, here's what I think we should do, and here's why. So that's the mindset that I try to cultivate. You don't have to have the loudest voice, but you do need to have a voice. I think that's what moves the work forward in this, for roles like ours, where we're trying to turn really complex ideas that honestly, at the end of the day, not too many people understand into digestible chunks. Having that opinion is so very necessary, is so very important in kind of showing that work to others. So yeah, that's kind of my leadership advice.
I
Nugget,
I
I'd say.
love that. Yeah, it's a lot of times people are always quiet and reserved because
Yep.
they feel I'm a junior employee and, I shouldn't voice my opinion. And I just, head down. I think, whether it be our parents or our grandparents' generation was very much head down, do your work,
Yep.
and, it'll go. And to your point, it's not about being the loudest one in the room, but, voicing an opinion and giving a thought, even if it's a different thought, doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. And I think being the leader that accepts other people's
Totally.
thoughts, whether they're the same or different, is a really valuable quality. So that's awesome.
I feel like my opinions that I share with, I heard someone say with radical candor are like shot down like 90% of the time. So like, it's just, which is fine. I think the flip side of that is you also have to be, you also have to, uh, I don't want to say accept yourself, but like be aware that you're probably going to be wrong or rejected most of the time. But, that's what comes with it. That's how people grow. That's how you learn. That's how I learned. So yeah.
Yeah, and it's to the rejection point too, though. It's also being in the right environment, and as you've grown and finding the right company and the right culture and the right place for you where your opinions and your voice is accepted, and that there's different, just because your opinion isn't accepted in one place, it could be that you're not at the right place for you, and finding that right company for you. And I think that's a lot of the advice that
100%.
people I give when people are like, hey, I'm thinking about switching from, agency side to sales or brand direct or client side, whatever it may be, is, it's finding the right culture for you that's going to allow you
You
to
to grow.
thrive and be heard. And, so would love, how you've kind of felt that the Pepsi culture kind of embraces that, while
Yeah.
also in your role of finding new data partnerships, looking at these different markets, and kind of how that all intertwines.
Yeah. The culture is hard. The culture is hard. I mean, it's point blank. And I think it's kind of meant to be hard. It's meant to be hard. It has a strong culture, it has a unique culture. And again, to bring back what we were talking about earlier, Ben, it's my first time working in a brand-led organization. So maybe folks listening that have worked at other CPG or other companies that are led by these brands will kind of feel this, will resonate with this. But these brands bring a lot of creative energy. They literally drive the business forward, but can also make things complex. Again, each one has its own identity, priorities, own way of working. Then you take that and split it across 200 different markets. Oh, it's hard. I think one of the biggest challenges in a company like ours, in a role like mine, is distilling and that retaining knowledge. We have external products, we have internal products, we have projects, we have programs. They evolve, they shift, they start, they sunset. Things move quickly. Things move so quickly, and if we're not intentional about it, a lot of this knowledge that we've built as a team, whether that's a SharePoint site, or in someone's mind or on someone's computer, or a learning series, it slips through the cracks. So there's that famous scene. I don't know if you watched Seinfeld when you were
Yeah.
younger, Ben, but there's a scene when Jerry goes to rent a car in the rental agency. The lady
Yes.
there is like, "We don't have a car," and he says something like, "Anyone can take a reservation. The hard part is the
Yep.
hold. The hold is the most important part." I love Seinfeld, and like that's so true for this. Like anyone can create learning. Anyone can create learning pathways. Again, training, SharePoints, docs, whatever. But the hard part is the hold of that. How do you create that evergreen knowledge, and how do you percolate that? So, like an organization with 300,000 plus people like ours can use it even after you're gone. So it's the hold. So I think that part in maintaining culture, at least in the data space that I play in, that kind of we broadly play in, it's clarity, it's consistency across all of that movement. It informs how we build playbooks, how we structure our partnerships, contractually, how we upskill teams on new tools. I want to focus on not just moving fast because the business demands it. I want to move fast and then carry those learning forwards, right? I think that's often maybe the less sexy side, the less cool part. It's like, how do we memorialize this? Because, we are all going to change roles sometime. We all may not work here. And then how do we make it easier for the next person than it was for us? Like, how do we kind of grease the wheels a little bit? So, culture to me is, I heard someone say this, so I'm not claiming ownership of this, but one of my old bosses, culture is how you collaborate under pressure. And it's like, ooh, it's short, it's pithy. I actually really like that. So again, focusing on not just building cool things, but building repeatable things, repeatable ways of working. I think that is certainly something I strive for, but I think has to be a focus for others going forward too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is there anything in particular right now that you're kind of working on
Yeah.
within that culture, that that is growing, that you're excited about, that you can speak to, about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I actually think this is a good one because it kind of illustrates a several different levers are changing. So right now, I'm really excited about as a company like ours, brand led, huge, global. We are evolving our approach to CTV attribution, which is cool to see a company of our behemoth size actually do this. So a little bit of background. CTV broke the attribution model that digital media has relied on for 10, 15 years. And honestly, that's a good thing. Most of that older model was built around identity level stitching, deterministic matching. But CTV, we don't have that. that level of granularity doesn't exist anymore. So PepsiCo, we are leaning into more. Uh, I I want to say a fancier word than cooler, but like cooler strategies, different strategies. We're leaning into probabilistic models, incrementality testing. We're leaning into outcome-based cohort analysis. So we're not. I think this is key. Like we're not trying to prove causality at the impression level. We're trying to prove impact at the behavior level, and that's a big difference for a company like ours. Again, budgets being siloed in the way that they are. The brands are trying to, maximize ROAS. But if we can zoom out a little bit and have our North Star be, impact at the behavior level, we can still do those things. But I think it's a more profound way of looking at the problem. What moved, where, and how did media influence? So, dovetailing with this, and this is what I thought about earlier when you asked the question, Ben, is that I'm seeing a culture shift internally. My team, my stakeholders aren't asking for, like click the rates on CTV anymore. It's like, what does that even mean? They're asking more impactful questions. They're acting, did this campaign accelerate demand velocity? Did we unlock a new high value segment? So that's a totally different bar. And it kind of pushes us to rethink what measurement looks like when it's built for outcomes and not just efficiency. So again, I think it's not so much a project per se, but it's several ongoing work streams that are upskilling how we approach a very real problem in a very cohesive and honestly quick fashion that I'm particularly excited to chat about for. So yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool too, because there has been, I feel, a trend over the years of lower funnel, lower funnel, lower funnel of what's the
Bingo.
ROAS, what's the click-through rate, what's the return on investment, like, and that's all
Totally.
anyone cares about. And then
Yep.
it's great to hear from Sightly's perspective as our patented technology is brand mentality. And you talked very heavily about your brand organization and the importance basically of brand, and that everything you were just talking about from the behavioral changes should help to then
Yep.
drive the lower funnel and get there. But there's been this challenge from agencies, from brands, from partners to focus on the click-through rates, focus on driving those
So
lower funnels. And you can't focus on the lower funnel if you don't understand the audience, you don't understand the behaviorals, you don't
totally.
understand what's going to resonate with them. And that's really something that, we've talked about for years at Sightly with our brand mentality platform, is how important it is to connect with the consumer and to pay attention. And, every day we see these moments happening in our country, in the world, that
Yep.
impact the individuals, and being able to be that brand that, culturally, you talk about it, obviously huge brand being Pepsi and the individual brands within there, but it doesn't mean that they can't still resonate with the individuals. And, we've seen, brands struggle and succeed with that for years, but it's really cool to hear that the cultural change is happening or happened already there for you through, I'm sure, tons of your partners.
Yeah, and honestly, that's I think the coolest part too, Ben. It's like I'm sure this is not just specific to PepsiCo. It's and we all have experiences like this across all where we worked, where we may adopt something, a new way of working, a new tool, but people's hearts aren't really in it. And like deep down, are we really going to do this in 6 months? Are we really going to a year? It's like I think the answer is probably no. But this is something we're getting the tools, we're getting the buy-in, and it works super well together. So yeah, it's not often I'll say that can happen, especially on a thorny issue like CTV attribution. So yeah, it's been an exciting few months.
Yeah, and I mean, especially in the CTV space, it's been, how many
Rough.
years where people have been trying to figure out their CTV strategy and what
Yeah.
to do with it.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Totally spot on.
Very cool. So switching gears a little bit to kind of outside of work, knowing that, you live and breathe data every day, and you're talking, working long hours, you're traveling a ton for work and speaking on all these panels. How do you ground yourself? And, knowing that you are a swammer, not a swimmer, so that's not something that
Yeah.
helps clear your head. What do you do in your free time to help kind of unwind and shut down and relax?
This is a good question. I'm a big solo traveler and I like being outside. Like I should caveat that I do love traveling with my partner, of course. Great, 100%. But I find being alone with your thoughts, I don't know if that sounds weird or sad, but like being alone with your thoughts, whether it's like sweating in a forest or like navigating a chaotic city that you don't know, it's good for the brain. I was out west in California for Memorial Day doing some hiking in some national parks. And I always joke, but like not joke that like sweating in a forest is therapy on a budget, right? It's like it's sweating, it's elevated oxygen, it's like being alone with your thoughts. I feel like I do my best thinking in moments like this. If you ever have like a really thorny problem, like go sweat in a forest and be alone. And I guarantee it, you will come back and you will at least made some inroads on that problem.
Do you have has there been one forest that has been more therapeutic than another for you?
It's none in the South because of the bugs. I'll tell you that. It's not. I don't. I'm not messing around with those mosquitoes. So, it's not that. I mean, you can't beat just like Colorado on West. It's just like that part of the country is so pretty. So, but it's not the South. That's for sure.
Okay.
That's for
All
sure.
right. Good to
Too
know
hot.
for anybody
Yeah.
listening that doesn't like bugs, which it's probably most.
Yeah.
Don't go
Yeah.
south for
Yeah.
it. No, it's 100% true. I think like everybody has their own unwind and ways of getting away, but I'm with you on the, sweat it out and step away and it clears your mind. And being
100%.
outdoors, I feel like living in, New York City, you kind of get
It's
trapped
tough.
in that a
Yeah.
little bit and forget of what fresh air. It's why Central Park is such an amazing, escape
Agreed.
in the city. But
Yep.
yeah, those I've never really been in the jungle on a hike, but maybe I know you're solo on it, but maybe one day we'll get out there together.
I like that. I like that. We can probably organize an event. Yeah, it's fine.
Yes, there we go. We'll make
Okay.
Andy will do another beat retreat with
Exactly. In
that
the jungle. Yeah.
in the jungle.
Yeah.
And if we do that though, what would be your favorite PepsiCo snack, drink, or
Ooh.
brand that you'd want us to bring? And we're gonna caveat this ahead of time that just because it's your favorite doesn't mean that all of the others aren't equally
Okay.
amazing.
Sure. Thank you.
But
Yes.
if you were to choose one to be on a desert island or on a hike with, what would it be?
Oh, this is easy. This is easy. I'm gonna cheat a little bit. This is actually a combo of two products, but it's they're made for each other. It's definitely Sabra hummus, which a lot of people don't know we own,
Yep.
and Stacy's pita chips, specifically the roasted red pepper. Sabra hummus with the extra crispy Stacy's. It's a great pairing because of course it tastes good, but it hits specifically on the sound of the crunch, like going into the creamy hummus in a way that other snack combos don't. I've clearly given this a lot of thought. So
Yes.
that is then that's the desert island snack. That's the 2 a.m. snack. Hell, that's the 6 a.m. snack. That's the 24/7 snack. So fully.
Okay, so within that, with the roasted red pepper flavor, are
Yep.
you scooping around the roasted red pepper to save that for last, or are you going full scoop across to make sure that you get roasted red pepper in every bite?
It's a cross. I find the
Okay,
smart that's too weird to me. That's too
okay,
hard. I don't want to strategize. I don't want to strategize my snacking. I just want
okay.
to but yeah, but I have seen people do chaotic things like that.
Yes.
Or in my
Well,
mind chaotic. Yeah.
it's like the well, we won't talk about some of the PepsiCo competitor snack foods, but the different ways of eating cookies or
Oh,
you
sure.
know
Yeah.
but do you go through a full tub in a
Oh,
sitting?
easy.
Okay.
Easy. It's healthy for you. It's healthy chickpeas. So
Well,
yeah.
and after you're, swamming, you've got to refuel
You
the
work up a
body.
great after yeah, you work up
Exactly.
hell of an appetite after swimming. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, Zach, it's been a absolute pleasure to have you on this amazing episode of Breaking Through the Mayhem. I cannot wait to see what is in store for data partnerships and measurement in the future. And thank you again for joining us.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Hannah, one of the producers for Sightly's Breaking Through the Mayhem podcast. We want to thank you so much for listening to the show. If you want to learn more about the guests we had on today, we included additional information about them in the show notes. Finally, if you'd like to be on the podcast, or if you know someone that would make a great fit, you could fill out the form at sightly.com/podcast. We hope you have a great day.